folks, welcome to this exciting video where you once again join me in the wild landscape of Scotland. And in this adventure I've basically stopped at the roadside because I've noticed this little, what looks like an old abandoned kind of farmhouse, croft kind of bit here. This is literally the same day as the last adventure where I just saw all those ticks, but here I am once again adventuring into this wild landscape. So check this out, this is incredible. Look at this way that the old bricks are here with the ivy bushes growing over the top of them. Wow, look how much ivy's on this side wall here. I love seeing all the different houses that I visit and just the different levels of decay that they're all in, and also through the little story of history that each house can tell. It's just so special to see, so interesting to explore. And this must have been what was the little farmhouse or croft house. And at that far side there you can see where the old farm buildings has been. Look at the landscape, how wild and overgrown it's starting to get. And this is only the start of spring, summertime really. Kind of the stuff's just starting to grow for the year. It's going to get crazy soon to explore places like this. Wow, look at this. I just think the people that may have looked out of this window at one time, there was probably like chickens and sheep, cows, all kinds of things going on out here when it was an original croft. Look, the lintel stones is actually missing off here above the door and above the window. Yeah, and this is the big lintel line down here. Wow, look at this is so interesting. That wall there is actually in great condition, and look at the wee fireplace. You can still see the old white rendering on the inside of the walls, and you can see it's had a few rooms because there's been an internal wall here which shows this little sitting room area or whatever it's been. It's been quite narrow. This may have been the kitchen at this end here, because this hole in the wall is what's known as a salt box, and that features in houses dating back to times before like fridges and things like that. This used to be the hole in the wall where they would store the salt, and they kept it near the fire. It was like the warmest wall in the house, because obviously the heat of the fire was keeping it warm. So when they stored their salt in that box, it kept it in its salt form, because obviously in the damp Scottish environment it would probably just decay and like melt down than if it was kept in a wet area. But it's cool, like you can often date the house from a thing like that. You can see how long ago the house was on the go, and credit to it, it stood the test of time here. I'm saying it must have been here from the early 1700s at least. That's what I would say from looking at the structure. And sometimes the walls stand because they're actually strengthened from the chimneys within them. I just keep looking down to make sure I don't have any ticks on me. That's something that people in the Scottish area have to look out for. There's always been ticks, but nowadays there's a new breed of tick around here, and they're just everywhere, and there's so many of them. Hundreds. One of my favourite things when I explore these old buildings is looking at the way the ivy often grows up them. The way nature always just takes back over these human structures. Yeah, it's just such a peaceful spot here. There's no sound apart from the birds tweeting. There's a cool detail there, look. You see the original lines in the stone where it was actually carved. There's no sign of a fire hearth or anything in here, like the actual metal work. Look up the chimney there, folks. Check it out, here's another detail that we've seen on other fires. They all had that. It was like a bar that they folded out over. They could hang their kettle on it and then hinge it in above the flame. There's the last remains of the cast iron from the fire. And that gives you an idea. It was likely a fire like which we've seen in the first abandoned house that I explored this week. Wow, let's go and have a look at this end of the place. There was probably like an internal wall here. Oh, I can see the line of it there. So there was an internal wall. There was maybe even a couple of different rooms there. Depends on the size of the family or whatever, or the size of the croft. But even like big crofts often used to just have a small house, so it's hard to like say, 'cause this one looks like it's only had the one shed, but that's often just what a Scottish farm was at a certain time. So another interesting detail that I've mentioned on some of the house videos I've been at recently, you can see the remains of the stone slab roof there. The roofs were often made of stone slab material, and then later houses which were upgraded and renovated, they had the slates put on them, likely in like the late 1700s, 1800 period. So that shows this building may have even been here from earlier times with that stone slab roof. Whoa, I'm seeing like beasties just falling down out the tree there onto me. It was like a slater. Look at this here. The old remains of the wooden mantelpiece. I think there's been more to it, but there's still some of the wood there, which is crazy to think. All the weather and things that it puts up with. Wow, look at, let's take a look up this chimney here. At this time of year, you can actually start to get wash bikes and stuff in buildings like this. Oh, look, there's a metal bit sticking out there. You can also see like the stone was often damaged and weakened from the heat of the fire. And this is another detail in the earliest abandoned houses I've been to. You see that white render on the interior. The ones which were open, like kept like on the go and kept being lived in for later times, they're actually inlaid with wood most of the time. But an interesting detail, folks, look at that. The original wallpaper, and you can see there's layers of wallpaper there. Wow. Just think they were wallpapering onto the top of that there, which is like just render on top of the cold stone. And imagine how cold your house wall would be if that was the setup. See, these windows have been blocked up or changed here, and often that was because at a certain time in the land there was like a window tax, and some buildings were changed. I can also see now further back, above that fire, it's had new red stone put in above it, and that must have been because the original stone was decaying with the heat of the fire, which shows this property was actually lived in for hundreds of years. Whoa, look, there's a spider. Look at that spider, folks. It's just gotten a fly live on the video. I need to get into a better recording position here. Look, it's pulling it into its nest. Wow, I wish I had a torch for that there. Big Scottish spider getting its breakfast. Wow. The sort of place like this now, that's what it is. It's still a home. It's just a home to nature and things like that, instead of the original farm workers or farm people. Whoa, I'm walking into the bush. I'm trying really not to do that with my head, because I didn't want any of those beasties to come down and land on me. So often in a place like this, folks, I imagine the people sitting in here, their day-to-day life, the conversations that went on in here, maybe all like the happy times or the sad times, arguments even, or maybe parties, it all went on within this, people's lives. And then one day it was just abandoned, no longer needed. The land around it, they probably had a couple of fields, and that would have been taken on from a nearby bigger farmer. And then buildings like this were just left, neglected. The little story they can tell is just almost forgotten. And that's why videos like this are special. Look at that there. The old remains of a metal piece. It looks original on there, so I'm not sure if it was along the door and it's been bent at some time with maybe the door getting knocked off. There's more remains of an old door piece of frame. Let's go and take a look over here and see what else remains within this land. Yeah, look, it's had a wee building on the side as well, which is like, had a tin roof by the looks of it. Oh, this is what I saw on a farm when I was in Perthshire like last week or whatever, 2 weeks ago. I saw that on the house wall there as well. So that must have been something that they actually had on the houses. Yeah, let's take a look around this side. It's just wild, beautiful farmland around here. and it's just perfect. Again, it's great level, prime agricultural land, and it's just, I'm kind of between Kirriemuir and Forfar for this one. Yeah, I love the way this tree and stuff's growing up the wall and then just kind of covering the architecture of the ancient building. Yeah, look at it here, the little window. See, it looks like that's an original feature, having the small bit like that below the window, because on the outside it looks original. So that could have been at that end, it maybe was never actually a window where I thought it had been bricked up. It was maybe just a little cupboard, like a recess built into the wall. Yeah, it's interesting to see these little windows, like, and just look how much of that like ivy and stuff's growing up there. Wow, it's such a ferocious bush or tree when it gets going. Whoa, I'm hitting my head off it, folks. Yeah, when it really gets going on a property like that, it just grows, and then eventually the thick trunks can actually go between the bricks and start splitting it and popping it. That's how often videos like this just keep the history alive, documenting it at a certain stage in its history. And it's actually starting to get pretty mild out here this time of year. That's a mild wind that's coming down there. And you get such a beautiful view here over the glens, the hills up there. All these cows are starting to walk down to where my car's parked, so I'm not sure what's going on out there just now. I'm wanting to push on into this building. Look, there's one of those black flies on that bush. Sometimes there's big black flies at this time of year and they give you a hell of a bite. They nip you. Look at this, see how the building's made out of that old stone, but it looks to me like it's been changed and developed at a certain time. Again, there's differences where they've made the doors and windows wider, so it may have even been like a farm worker's house as well, and then it's been converted into a shed years later. That's another thing, sometimes this house is on farms abandoned because nowadays you don't need the same amount of people to do the job. Like back in the days, 1800s, early 1900s, you needed so many people to do the job now, where the machines are so much bigger, they can take on so much more land quicker and easier. I'm just checking once again on this adventure whether there's any little ticks kicking about on me, and so far so good. I'm only a couple of miles from where I was on my last adventure, and it just shows you there's no ticks at this spot yet, but they'll be there for sure. I've probably just not gone through the right bushes, but I'm being so much more cautious because I know they're there, obviously. Yeah, the landscape looking up this direction, that's Forfar, you can see on that hill there in the distance. Let's just see what's here. Yeah, this has been like a farm shed for sure. Oh, there's a cool detail in here. I'm not sure if I'll get over to it. Look at this, folks. What has this been? Look. Oh, it's an old spring like balance or something with the hooks on it. The metal, it goes right down in there. It's an old piece of farm equipment. That hooks can swing up and down on there. Oh, that's interesting to see. A little bit of the farming side of stuff that's still left here. It looks to me like there's been more like a wooden roofed building out there, and that makes sense as to why that back door's been made wider. They probably had this for a cow shed, and then it was fine for them getting out and in at the back. They maybe even had a wee tractor or something in there eventually as the technology progressed and the years went on. They maybe had to make the door bigger for their little Fords and Major. But there we go, folks, just check that out. Once again, we've managed to document an abandoned farm house, little farm building. Last week I had no idea. Like, I didn't, like, shout out AKR because he actually mentioned this place to me and he reminded me of it because I had seen it probably in the last couple of years. I've noticed it a couple of times and thought, oh, I need to look at it, and then sometimes when you're out exploring you don't remember the individual places, But AKR, channel historian, reminded me about this, so shout out. Incredible location, and I love the way you can still see the white render and the fire. It shows you like the real character of that house. And it's been a beautiful little croft in its day. They probably just had maybe this little field here or whatever originally. Oh, look at this, in the long grass there's actually an old wheeled item. Looks like an old trailer or maybe an old feed thing that they pulled along. You see the wheels, and it's like just a frame. It's so overgrown here though, folks. Stuff like that's just hard to get to. So this is what I absolutely love, folks. Just seeing things like this, documenting them for the world to see, tells the story of the heritage of Scotland. And this is like what a lot of farms looked like back in the day. And little houses like this, eh? Just, times have changed so much. The technology's moved on so much in the couple of 100 years or whatever since this place was thriving. But nowadays it's still thriving, but with wildlife and nature. Humans have moved on just to use this land for agriculture. And you can see it here with these cows. Check it out, folks. Happy Scottish cows right here. And it's cool to have this as we've explored an abandoned farm. This actually gives you an idea of the sort of cows and stuff they may have had back then on the farm. It looks like they're pretty wild beasts, like they've maybe just freshly been put in this field. They probably didn't see many humans. But that's the sort of animals they may have had. Probably a small croft like this, it wouldn't have had that many cows. They may have only had like 5 or 6, or who would have even known? It's so long ago. These cafes here look like, well, they're young cows. They look like they're about a year old. But now in some of the fields there's tiny little cafes and they're so cool. But often that's the sort of place, like cow fields and stuff, this time of year when you're exploring you have to be super careful. Like it often makes some adventures like impossible. Like if I was trying to go and explore a house or something over that direction, I would have to go such a crazy mad route. That's why in the winter I hit a lot of the harder to reach locations so hard. At this time of year I love these little roadside locations. But whatever it is, I just love fresh places and fresh things that I've never seen. Anyway, I'm going to end this one here. Thanks very much for tuning into this adventure. If you've not subscribed, give the subscribe a click, because I love uploading these videos and doing these adventures as much as I can, because it's so much fun. Anyway, we'll catch you soon for the next one, folks.